how did we meet?
You know, I started getting occasional Facebook messages from you, and I didn't know exactly who you were, except for that when I was like, hey, who's this dude, John Willis? Tactical Redneck's like, John Willis messaged you? And so then I checked out your YouTube channel, and you at that point had told a story on one of your videos about this chick in Tennessee who was doing a side hustle selling coffee, referring to me.
Okay.
So apparently you heard about me probably on TSP.
Yeah.
And then you were where I was in Tennessee, and you listened to one of my podcasts where it was in 2020, my revenue had gone to zero, and I was like, screw it. I'm going to grow anyway.
That's the first time you heard of me was in 2020?
No, I had heard of you before, and we had texted, and I would say, oh, hey, can I come drop by when I'm driving through?
Okay.
And a couple times what happened is you answered, and Facebook didn't give me notice. And so when you texted me about that podcast, you're like, hey, why don't we do a coffee? Like, I'll do a coffee with you.
So you were probably dead to me because I messaged you and you never replied.
Yeah.
Twice. So
no, I had replied.
You were dead to me.
No, I had replied, and we'd gone back and forth, and I said, hey, could I stop by? And then you didn't reply to me and say, yeah, drop in during business hours, because you don't care who drops by during business hours.
I was giving it back to you.
Yeah, and then that notice didn't come through. And so when you messaged me about that podcast, and you said, you know, I heard that podcast, and you told me you were doing exactly what you wanted to do, and that your sewing business really facilitates that for you. And I was like, that's badass. And then you said, well, do you want to do a coffee? And I said, well, I'll bring it out, and we can taste it next week.
So that was.
And then I saw that you had messaged me, and I never got noticed.
So I have that happen a lot of times. Like, I'll reach out to people, and when I go into, especially on Instagram, because there's like 10 files in Instagram on a business account. There's the primary, the general, and then there's like 3 more in that other thing. So a lot of times I'll go message people, and I'm like, holy shit, they've been messaging me for 2 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But I knew about you from the Survival Podcast, so that like the actual Jack had done whole entire episodes with you, and then when he started the Expert Council, and I knew Tactical Redneck.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that was Tactical Redneck, right? So I knew him from the internet.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that he was out there in your group. Like, I had no idea.
Right.
And then when I met him, I'm like, I don't think this is the same dude, right?
Yeah.
And it is. It's definitely.
It is.
And then the coffee thing, when I heard you say that, I'm like, hey, this is a perfect opportunity. It's starting to, like, fall is coming. Let's do a coffee. We've talked about it. We've done coffee. We've done T-shirts. And I had artwork for coffee. We were going to use a company out of San Francisco that was going to roast. And when I talked to him, I'm like, I just want something like Starbucks, Christmas blend that they discontinued, because I liked that. And we had stickers. I'd had sticker artwork ready to go for 10 years probably.
Wow.
Like the one that we used finally. So that finally got used. And I'm like, how many can you do? And I think you said 60. I'm like, cool, what would it take to do 120? And then your roaster caught on fire. Like,
yeah, that was like my whole world opened up because of that roaster fire, right? And I decided to grow no matter what. And when you reached out, I thought, well, I'd rather meet him in person, because then we can see if we trust each other or not. And I rarely will go meet people in person, but I was like, it's worth the drive. I'm doing it.
This is different too. Like, you're not going to some dude's house. Like, you never know what you're showing up to.
Yeah.
You knew what you were coming to.
Yeah,
here. Like,
it was
there's 20
different.
people here.
And when I said I was coming here, everybody in the holler wanted to come with me. And I was
sure
like, no, I'm doing this on my own. I'm making my
own
own first impression, man. I'm doing it by myself.
Were they coming to protect you, or because they wanted to come?
Probably because they wanted to meet you. I'm sure.
So we did the coffee. The coffee sold out pretty fast. We did another run of coffee. We did a second kind of coffee. The coffee tasting was cool because you brought like 11 kinds, right?
Yeah.
And we had probably 10 of our people tasted it. And I'm like, I like this one. And Amanda, and we all liked the exact same thing. Like, every single person to the last person chose the roast that we chose.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. It's awesome. So how do we get those into K-Cups?
We do a minimum run, I think, of 10,000. And here's the thing about K-Cups. You roast the coffee and age it for a month.
Because the oil to work in the machine, it has to be...
No. So when coffee is freshly roasted, it's off-gassing CO2. And if you put that in a K-Cup, the K-Cup shall explode.
Got it, okay.
And so you have to age... So it's going to be a little more stale. but I think it's a 10,000 minimum when I've looked at it. And
So-
I try, like, you can use these disposable K-cups and it tastes terrible.
They're like fiber or something.
Yeah, they're
aren't they?
awful.
Yeah.
They're awful. So it's
Yeah.
better just to either use the ones you get at the store that you can refill that you're never going to use because that's not what you like to do with your coffee. He just wants to.
I feel like they're broken all the time. Like maybe
Yeah.
I have some broken ones or something.
Yeah.
But it's just too simple to. Like I have a real coffee machine. Like I need a coffee person. Like I need a barista, right?
Yeah.
Like because I can do a lot of other things in that 2 minutes that making that thing, right? Because then it's just not ideal for me.
Yeah.
So the 10,000 to get 10,000 K cups, you roast it and then ship them the roasted coffee.
Yeah, and then they do just a custom run for me. I would need to verify the number, but I think it was 10,000.
There's got to be a way we can just do it, like, and put it in our own K cups. I mean.
Oh, you can buy a K-cup machine too.
Like every drug dealer in the world.
Yeah, I did decide not to buy a K-cup machine because that is not what I love about coffee roasting is putting it in packages.
I understand.
And I would have to hire somebody and they would have to show up for me to live up to that commitment. Yeah,
I feel like I could sell 100 times more coffee. Like we sell it in 1 pound and we sell it fast.
Yeah.
But I feel like we could sell 100 times. Like I can make a K-cup of coffee in my truck. You don't have a K-cup thing in your truck?
Okay, so when I travel, I have a little kit, and it's got a camp stove, and a cone, and coffee, and I just do a pour over at the rest area, and people look at me funny.
Are you in like an Asylum Green Airstream trailer?
Absolutely, no, but the kit's about this big, so it takes up a little, and then I have the camp stove for eating freeze-dried food.
So I see the Instagram posts of that stuff, right? So I buy all that. I'm like, there's a pink one. I can get Amanda one, right? And then I'll get this black one, and we'll shoot some cool photos, and we'll tag the companies. I have there's 20 AeroPresses.
Yeah.
I've got the glass one, and I've got the Lexan one, so in case the end of the world and the glass breaks, I have them. I don't think I've ever used them one time.
Yeah, I've used a lot of those, and a lot of them don't make very good coffee.
They make good pictures on Instagram.
The pour over cone is still winning for me for traveling.
Yeah, we go to a restaurant in Las Vegas that does like this cold pour over or something. Boy, that stuff's good. Mm-hmm. That stuff's really good. So I see you like all the time now. Like, we are together very, very frequently.
Yeah.
What prompted that? We did the coffee, and then we did during COVID. We didn't do any parties. But we just kind of said, hey, show up on this date and we're going to do this thing. And what happened was guys came in and I'm like, holy shit, there's a lot of people here. I've really let these guys down. And I'm like, there's no machine guns here. There's no bands. I don't even have catered food. Like there's no food trucks. And they're like, we don't care. We want to see the rabbits. We want to see the aquaponics. We want to see the pond. We want to see the wood chips. They just were hungry because all of our clientele for the most part, those are gun dudes, right? Or tactical guys.
Right.
And the homesteading stuff, I knew you had been doing, helping put Jack's event together. I knew you were doing tons of stuff at your place. It seems like you're doing something it's more than every quarter, right? You're doing something?
I'll try to get at least one processing event every year. We're doing an open house next week where I just let people potluck and come in for the people who are it's not in their budget to pay for some of the paid events. I do an annual spring workshop, and this year I am installing a food forest just because the time is right. So if we're doing something big, I'll usually also turn it into a workshop if we can, so other people can learn how to do it.
Awesome. So we did those 2 parties and Amanda, when I got in bed, Amanda's like, you look beat up. Like what's wrong with you? I'm like, I've just been going all day. I am so tired. This is so much more work than a normal party, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's when I reached out to you, I think, and I'm like, hey, I think there's really something to this. And you're like, yeah, dumbass, of course there's something to it. I want to do this. And she's like, well, how involved do you want to be? And I go, well, I want you to do all the work and I'll just show up and take all the credit. And that's really what happens. She does all the work. I don't take all the credit.
She doesn't take all the credit. He thanks me and stuff.
But it's turned into something. So and for the first 2, it's self-reliance festival. .com. You can come get tickets. And she does that better than I do.
There'll be a link in the description.
There'll be a link in the description. Are you going to have that? Put your voice in there.
If you want me in it, I'll be in it.
I don't.
There's a link in every description of your video.
You can always
I keep forgetting
be.
to tell you.
You can always be in it. So we did the first two, and I didn't even the name would not stick in my head. I kept calling it something else.
Yeah, we're not going to say those words right now because other people do that too.
Oh, because of me?
If I could buy that other domain and forward it, I would. But there are people doing an event under that name.
There actually is.
But they don't do it as often, and they don't update their site for the next one. So hopefully they have gotten some good traffic from us.
Right. Some of our people went there.
At the end of the day, if people are learning these skills, I think it's important. The cool thing about Self-Reliance Festival, I think, was that it was truly a bottom-up thing where you said, hey, let's do this event. And I said, let me think about that for 2 months while I decide if I can really put this much into it right now. And I came back and you were like, how much is it going to cost? And I said, well, if it doesn't pay for itself, it doesn't make sense to do it. But let's just see who will come. And we put stuff out there and just said, if you've got something you can demo, if you got something you want to talk about, fill out this Google form and show up. And that first one was fantastic. You know, people chipped in, volunteered. We had really cool demos. We had the blacksmithing one, which is a really popular demo. He keeps coming back, which is great.
So he worked here for me.
Yeah.
And we parted ways, I would say, on very poor terms, probably. Mm-hmm. And that has actually brought he and I back together.
Oh, that's good.
Like way, way more back together than we were. So that's awesome there. Did you think that when you said yes, did you think that it would be what it was the first time?
I thought it would be what it was the first time, but what it was the third time, which was in June, I didn't see that happening so quickly. So what happened is we had so much fun at the first one. While we were there, we decided to do the second one.
In 3 months. And it got in February where it might be icy. And at that one, it was clear that we were going to go big because people were so excited to finally talk to other people who they could relate to develop the relationships, to learn things they've been wondering about that when you watch it on video, you can't quite wrap your arms around it. But then you come here, you see, like now we're going to have some really cool swales to show because we've just put in swales today. You got the aquaponics system. They're seeing how you are growing food while also running a business. Yeah.
Which means you're not putting all your time in growing the food. Yeah. Meanwhile, other people are scrabbling in the earth trying to grow food all the time and getting very poor results.
I think people have a misconception of how much time I actually spend outside. Yeah. Like we had said something and you said it takes so long, and I'm like, Nicole, I literally feed every animal on the property in 17 minutes. Mm-hmm. You're like, no, you don't. There's no way you feed every. Mm-hmm. But that's the deal. And I'm probably 90 minutes outside maybe.
Yeah.
And it's usually when everybody leaves.
Right,
so employees leave between 5 and the last person leaves at 6. And I want to be outside at 6 to 9, but I never am. I'm outside 7 to 9, 7:30 to 9 maybe. Yeah. And most of that is just this 100-degree weather we've been having. And it's brutal. It's dragging a hose to a tree that we planted in the complete wrong time of the year in the complete wrong manner.
Yeah.
And standing there for 2 minutes on 40 some trees. So I'm 80 minutes just dragging hose. But I never had thought we would do them every quarter. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how long every quarter would sustain. Like I'm always surprised they get like, where is that going to plateau, right? When are they going to be like, I've had enough of this stuff. But I think that we bring enough value and enough people, like you could come and completely be like, man, I don't like that John Willis guy, but we have such great people. Yeah. They're like, I guess I'll go to John Willis's place. And then that has also turned into accountability, right? If I'm telling people, hey man, fitness is free, you should look different next time you're here. Mm-hmm. Well, then I fucking better look different next time I'm here. If I tell you that you can plant these trees and don't worry about what other people say, well, then I better have those. Those trees better still be alive in 90 days when they come back. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. Yeah. I think I've done a pretty good job of that. And then you've got, your place is completely changed. It's
completely changed. We moved a mountain, basically.
Literally
we carved into the mountain, rocks.
Yeah, you guys really needed like a jackhammer on an excavator or dynamite or something.
No, I have a tactical redneck. It's like that, only it eats a lot more beef.
He's gonna lose a hand one day.
Yeah, maybe not. I think we're kind of over that phase, but yeah.
So what do you see? So we're here doing a swales workshop right now. Literally downstairs and 50 feet away over there, there's 40 people with a presentation going. We're up here recording this. October, how far are we from October right now? 4 weeks, 6 weeks?
Couple of months.
2 months?
2 months.
So
We got
8 weeks?
2 months. At this point, all of the speakers and demos are locked in, except for I could fit a few more demos if I needed to.
You better be really good.
And it better be good. And I have a couple people who may see this video and say, like, what? And if I've already been talking to you, then you're already mentally in the pipeline. It's gotten very popular. So people want to be asked to speak here, and that's cool. What I don't want to see it turn into is it's just all famous people and the same famous people every time. The cool thing, I think, about Self-Reliance Festival is somebody in the audience says, you know, I know the ancient art of salt boxing. Can I do that next time? And we let that person do that. And that may be the first time they've really broached a presentation, and that's fine. In a demonstration situation, I think it's a little less intimidating than standing up in front of a big sea of people. And we are tapping into things that have been forgotten, that aren't forgotten.
Are you, when you say salt, you mean salt box hams?
Yeah,
Like
so
hams?
for example, that would be a good one to have.
An example of what you were just saying is like, you take people from literally ground zero and they're like, hey, maybe I can do this blacksmith thing, right? Like Rosie.
Yeah.
Rosie watched some videos, came here, works for me, went to Self-Reliance. She's like, hey, can I swing that hammer? And Nick was like, yeah. And then the second time, she's actually out there as an assistant. So Nick's able to go do some things while she's pounding out metal. And now that's transitioned. She's like, I want to start this business. And now she's got this business started.
Yeah.
And so she didn't blacksmith last time. She actually had a table vending. She brought a ton of samples or product to sell in here today.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Nicole's really good about, I don't know if it's naturing or just kind of like starting them, right? Hey, you can do this.
Yeah,
planting that seed and then telling them, hey, we want to see you present, right? We want to see you here as a vendor. We want to see you here teaching something. And we've really seen that, like from 1 to 2 and then especially 3, like a lot of those people came in and they're actually speaking now.
And now a lot of those people are starting their own events. So the really cool thing, and a lot of people wouldn't think this is cool. I think it's cool. I'm seeing other events pop up in other places, and they're like, hey, Nicole, you don't mind, do you? I'm like, I'll promote it.
Yeah.
We're going to do this here. Self-Reliance Festival is not going on the road. It's not going to be done in Arizona. So if you're asking me about doing Self-Reliance Festival in Arizona, do one.
Change the name a little and put that thing on.
Do it. And maybe ask some of us to come speak. Some of us can travel, some can't. But it's really cool to see these coming up because the more people who can take care of themselves, build community, take care of the community, the stronger we are as a nation.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
And that's what's important to me is like that.
And the more of us there are, then the less silly shit's going to happen. Like, no, we are not going to do that. No, we are not going to comply. No, you are not going to do that to us. And it literally, every gun dude says that. But when you teach people to grow food or to educate their own children and take them out of the system, I mean, if you want to see how crazy shit really is, just try to listen to your kids' school. Just ask yourself why there are not cameras in school like there are in daycares. Why do you not have an app on your phone where you can see what your child is what's being said to your child in the school? And because you can at daycare. You have been able to since we've had internet at daycare. So that's just, I mean, we can go down that road, but that's not really what this is about. So what do you see for October? Like, how's October going to be different from the last one?
We got the canning thing nailed. We have wanted to have food preservation, which a lot of people want to know about, happen. And I can teach that, but I cannot run Self-Reliance Festival and teach that and do both well. And this time I saw somebody on Facebook post their canning training center picture, and they live 45 minutes from here.
Wow.
And I said, so are you teaching canning at Self-Reliance Festival? And she said, well, I thought about maybe I'm like, get your app in. She actually was the milk person this morning.
Oh, cool.
So she has a cow, milking cow. And I said, well, cool. Get that in. And we talked today about what she's going to teach. I think she's going to teach pressure canning.
Does she have a trailer, like a mobile thing? Or?
We'll talk about logistics. I mean, my propane cooktop will be all she needs, and that's easy to bring in. So that's going to be there. I think we may have a spinning demonstration. So we've been looking at getting two things a little bit more beefed up, a little bit more on the tactical self-defense side. Because your network comes from the gun side. My network comes from the homesteading side. And there's been sort of this, I'm homesteading, I'm taking care of myself, but
maybe
stuff's not going to get bad. And then they're like, oh, stuff's going to get bad. And I have just spent the last, 2 decades and I don't really know. Like, in a pinch, I think I could defend myself, but you don't know till you know.
It'll never happen to me.
Right, it'll never happen to me. And then on your side, what we've had are people who are more in that just tactical arena who haven't thought about, well, can my body run a mile?
I would like to think, too, that it's not our people, but in the gun, is a community or whatever, right? In the gun groups, you see, I don't need a garden because I'll just go take it.
I'll just go take it.
Yeah, I'll go take it.
That lasts for about a month.
Yeah, even the best guys going and taking shit for a living, you're only going to do 10 operations before one of your guys is down, done for. And those are the best dudes. So.
And I know from taking that emergency medical class, I know what my physical response to tension is. And I know that I'm not going to say what it is on a video, but I know that I am not as sharp or moving as precisely is probably the best. Like the flipper hand thing that happens.
That was an intermediate action medical with tactical response.
Yeah, with tactical response. And I'm really glad I went to that because I knew I needed to change my mindset. I didn't know how to change it. And that changed it. And I'm sure I have more work to do. But that helped me say, okay, so if I've decided, it's like when you butcher an animal. If I had decided to kill this creature, I don't stop till I kill it.
Right, yeah.
And that's the same if you're in a situation where violence is, you have to decide harder that you're getting out the other side of that, and you still might not. But if you haven't decided harder already, and they already have decided harder, you're gone before you even decided.
What do you think attendance is going to look like October?
I think we will have 800 to 1,000 on October.
I'm saying 1,000.
What happened when we launched tickets is there was the initial excitement and then nothing. And then last week, we started selling a bunch of tickets. And we did roll out speakers. So Jack Spirko is coming to speak. He's going to talk about aquaculture.
Which, he has an amazing course coming out.
Yeah.
Like, an amazing course coming out. Like, I'm going to buy the course when it comes out for sure.
I believe Ken Berry is coming. I'm going to double confirm with him and just make sure it's on his calendar. Because they just had a baby. So I was giving them a couple weeks. Let's see who else is coming. Ken Esch is going to talk about working with different personality styles. We've got Easy Peasy, Mike.
Oh, awesome. What's Mike talking about?
He's talking about flow.
Okay.
And I am asking him to change his title because nobody knows what flow means. But it's basically about how to tap into the shape and flow of things to work towards your benefit rather than feel like it's acted on you and be defensive.
Jack just interviewed him on that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's a good topic. And so we have a little bit more of that philosophical side because what we're getting in this network, which is really exciting to see, is we have people like your employee who started blacksmithing, is now launching a business, is now selling probably more than she can produce is what's going to happen at the next Self-Reliance Festival. And she's going out of our network into other places. So there's that aspect. And so we're bringing in a little bit more of that. Okay, well, now you started your business. That's cool. Because that is one more step of security where you're bringing in your own income. If you're fired for not getting anything, it doesn't matter because you're bringing in your own income. It mattered not to you or me about that.
No, not at all.
So
no, my fear, my only real concern with that, after the first 2 weeks or so, was whether they were going to shut down postage, right? So if we couldn't move mail, then we're done until it's back on, or if they lock interstate commerce or whatever.
Which could still happen.
And that's really when we kind of got a lot heavier in food production. We produce a lot of food. I don't use a lot of the food we produce. A lot of it goes back to the animals.
Yeah.
Some of it does get used on the property here, but I consider it like we have a lot of animals alive, I consider it meat on the hoof. We're constantly maintaining the flocks and breeding them and reproducing if we need them, and if we don't, I mean, they're dog food. We use a lot for dog food. So it's just kind of practice. That's really what it's come down to. And if you look 2 years ago, 3 years ago, our gardens looked way better then than they do right now, and we've had practice. So what is the issue? And the biggest issue is the heat. Just the heat, and I think that there's some other shit going on in the air that's maybe intentional to make those stop producing. I think that, well, we know that they control you through food, and that's always, it's been repeated all through history. So
yeah, if we have a famine, a lot of people are going to die, and some of them not from starvation. It's going to be because other people are hungry.
Right.
Hungry people do things.
Yes.
Reasonable hungry people don't stay reasonable.
Our homeless people in the top 5% income earners in the world, right? So you're going to have, during famine, you're going to have massive die-offs in other countries. The die-offs you're going to have here are going to be at the hand of man. Like, I don't personally know anybody that is going to die from starvation. They're going to die from other desperate people, perhaps, if I know anybody that dies. It's not going to be because they weren't able to get food. Mm-hmm. So
it's actually, we're fairly lucky still in the U.S. that we can grow food. I think the cool thing about Jack's aquaculture topic is that it mitigates some of the heat and drought issues as long as you have the water to begin with. And you can grow a lot of animal feed and human feed very quickly in the aquaculture. That's why we've gone into a lot of aquaculture systems at my place. When I was so into the coffee that I deprioritized gardening for about 5 years, but I always had aquaculture and aquaponics going on, and so I was able to get some food. Now I'm back into gardening in the ground. It's been the worst first year back ever.
But it's still exploded. I mean,
yeah.
Seeing it this year compared to the last couple of years, I mean, now that you've got everything kind of where you want it, I mean, you're growing shit everywhere.
I am. I got a zucchini, which is like probably a decades long project for me to get a zucchini plant to live long enough through squash vine borers that I get some vegetables. I was like, oh, I got a zucchini. It's going to be zoodles. I'm going to freeze dry them. Not even going to eat it fresh. I'm so excited about it.
So in all the gardening groups on Facebook, nobody's getting zucchinis this year.
Yeah.
Like, zucchinis just don't exist.
Let me think about. There was something about the location that I think the ducks have access to it.
So
they eat the bugs
along a squash pumpkins. As you're driving in, you'll see half of those pumpkins out there are yellow, and that's those, right? So however many you think you need to plant 3 times more to beat the bugs, or spray them, or do something. I mean, but those are terrible. Like, we didn't put any zucchini or squash in this year because of those.
Because of those things. So my 2 plants that are producing are on the hillside garden, and I just threw them there because I ran out of place in my other garden. And the ducks were in there picking at them yesterday, or before I came here. And I thought, that's why. It's because all the squash vine borers and the bugs are getting just nailed by
So my ducks, when they're over by the pumpkins, they're eating the flowers.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're after the flower, and flowers become fruit or underneath. So
it.
how did you get, like, I know your story, but some people listening might not. What were you doing 10 years ago? Like, how did you get here from what you used to do?
10 years ago, I was very active in the liberty movement in public policy.
Okay, prior to that then, weren't you a communist?
I was so that was several decades
like
ago.
A real communist, like.
I thought communism would work.
Yeah, look at Russia.
Because all of the stories about that were wrong. And I thought communism would work because it was the most fair way to allocate resources to everybody, and I wanted to take care of people, and I love people.
I'm so fucking tired of hearing
fair. And I thought that, but at the same time, if I look at my family and upbringing, almost everybody in my family has some sort of entrepreneurial thing they've done. Like, my grandfather launched a restaurant and ran it and earned enough money for retirement that they retired early and lived into their 90s on their retirement. They had like $4,000 left, I think, when my grandma finally passed. But that's perfect. That's, and they, in their retirement, they prospected for gold. They were rock hounds. They would pick peaches and can them. They did all these different, like, they had 3 or 4 careers after that of just a wonderful retirement. That was my model of, hey, if you work hard and you start your own thing, you can make money. So I always was kind of like, but money's cool. But communism, and I didn't really understand what communism was.
Right.
And then I was working in Portland, Oregon, and they have mass transit there, which they just laud how awesome their mass transit is. I was using that to get to work. And I would walk out my door, get on a bus, and it was an express bus. 25 minutes later, I'd be downtown. I'd work, and same thing on the way home, with 25 to an hour, depending on if there was an accident. And then they put in light rail. Light rail is expensive and slow. So hard rail, like a train, can go fast.
What's the difference between light rail and hard rail?
Light rail is a different technology. It's a different kind of steel. And the trains cannot go as fast as
So it's like the trolleys that we had in San Diego.
Yeah, that's a trolley. But yeah, light rail is just... So in San Francisco, you have BART. That's light rail.
Is BART still there?
I don't know. But
I thought the BART tunnels are like full of zombies. I saw people going in the BART stations that are full on like needles laying on the ground, like looking at it.
They put light rail in. My commute went from 25 minutes to about an hour and a half, and 2 changes to get there. And the other problem is the crime. So I don't like being beat up or raped or robbed. And on the bus, you have a driver who is a person who at the minimum can pull the bus over and let people off or call the cops, whatever it's taken. It's a lot harder, I think, to assault people when other people are around who are in positions of some amount of responsibility. On the train, they can film your ass being beaten and maybe find that person. And if you look at crime rates within a mile of either side of where they put light rail, they're through the roof because it's a getaway. Like, I'm going to go steal here, jump on that, and I'm just gone. I've melted into the world. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are we doing this? We could have, like, literally dedicated asphalt without spending all this money and put buses nose to butt and moved more people than this thing because it's slow and buses are faster. It would cost less. You could do it electric buses if you were worried about the gas use. Like, all of it makes no sense. If I was in charge, I would do this. And the minute I had that thought, like, this little, like, accountability Nicole appeared on the scene and said, hey, that's not fair. In fact, communism isn't fair. None of that's fair if somebody has to decide. The minute somebody's deciding who gets what, nothing is fair. And I worked on the same floor as a free market think tank. And I knew somebody who worked there, and I sort of knew they did this politicky stuff. And I went over and talked to him, and it just happened to be that one of their employees was one of the best minds in the country on smart growth, land use planning. He came from an environmentalist, socialist background and realized it wasn't fair, and it was actually hurting the environment to have all these policies. And I was faced with, you can use logic and reason and facts, and you will get a different answer if you separate that from your emotions. And from that point on, I became I was an anarchist within probably 6 weeks.
Did you know it?
Did I know I was an anarchist? I knew I was an anarchist. I ended up quitting that job and working for that think tank. So I knew it just because they were there, and I had some of the greatest minds. I could ask who would build the roads, and instead of ridiculing me, they would say, this is how roads were built before we did all this other crap that we do. Like, they literally had the answer. What about safety? Like, well, how do you fund cops? Like, they had this whole vision, and I knew that you don't just, like, wave a magic wand and all of that happens and we're all happy because free markets will fix everything. But I knew it was a better solution than what we have now. And since that time, to my frustration, the country has gone more and more and more towards fascism.
Yeah, especially the cities.
Yeah, it's horrifying to watch it, and to watch people incited to violence and manipulated by the media and by their government officials, and then justify the violence as it's okay because it's for this cause, and that's not really violence. Your words are violence for even arguing with me. So it's like 1984. They're just redefining words, and through shaming and through bullying, pushing people to accept the narrative. And when you get under that, you realize a lot of people who accept the narrative don't really accept it.
Yeah.
And it's when we get together at things like Self-Reliance Festival that people who may not feel as brave as you or I do about speaking up about it, get some bravery, and that's okay. I actually think that's part of human nature. We're herd animals. It's easier to go with the herd, and when you find people who are willing to stand up, that's why people come to you all the time, because you're willing to just say whatever the hell you think.
Well, it's because I can't be fired.
Yeah. But the fact that you're able to do that, people won't watch. They see that. They want to be able to do that. They don't feel like they have the power, and then they come here, and they realize they had that power the whole time.
Yeah,
and that's what's making a difference. So that's what excites me about that event. It's just watching those people go boop.
You see it too when it happens.
Yeah.
Like you see the moment when they realize it.
Yeah.
Like you see it in their face.
Yeah. Sometimes it's funny because sometimes they're like, "This is great," and sometimes they're like, "Oh my God, I have so much work. I have so much work to do now."
Yeah. I'm gonna completely throw my life up.
My whole everything I've done.
Yep.
And that's when I was in public policy because I was working in public policy for 14 years, trying to change on the local level, more school choice, like all of the things that we work on, which is important. And you would win on one thing, and you'd be like, yes, we won. We got, educational savings accounts for Tennessee students. This is awesome. And then it would be like this regulation, that horrible thing, and you just watch it all like in aggregate, like you just lost because you can't do everything at once. And it was demoralizing to me, and I was like, I want to make a difference in the world. I want to do something, and I realized if I can help 2 people take control of their lives, be the owner of their income, make that switch where they see, okay, it actually is a choice and it's in my control, and I know it's going to be a lot of work and this sucks, but I got to do it. I had to go through that too. I cried for days when I realized, when my eyes opened, I was like, I just spent a decade of my life wasting all that time, and I'm like, well, I can't dwell on that. I got to move forward. Right. If 2 people do that, they will help 2 people. Those people will help 2 people, and that is just.
Do you think you were just trying to a point where you're like, this isn't doing anything? I'm just going to take care of myself and me and mine, right? And that's how I looked at it, was me and mine. And then if we do enough good stuff, and it wasn't by plan, but this is how it happened. If you do enough real stuff, people show up. And if we can just get everybody to tell 2 people and bring 2 people, then it's within, it's so exponential, it's so rapid. And it's just become something way beyond, right? And it's not even us anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like they could run it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. They can go and do this somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if you just do good things, the right people will show up.
There's 2 parts to that. If you do good things, the right people will show up. When the wrong people show up, if you cut them out, and that was what I had to learn. As your bleeding heart liberal friend, I had to learn that you don't just let everybody in. And that doesn't mean I'm going to sit you down and have a conversation about if you do something egregious, I'm going to kick your butt out. But if somebody comes and is not a doer, they either turn into a doer, because that happens all the time, or we're so busy doing that they don't want to be here anymore because we expect them to do. I watched the Swale workshop today, and it was awesome. So Testimona is here, and Testimona is not a homesteader, but is motivated to learn a whole bunch of new stuff.
Yeah, she's like a Hollywood rock star.
She's a Hollywood rock star. And, that's not who you think of as homesteader, is it?
No.
And she's a creative. Does she work with her hands? I don't know, but I know this. When Billy's like, who's gonna shovel, the first person to jump into the swale with a shovel was Tess. And she started shoveling, and she's like, this is great. I'm learning something I've never done before. And that's a willingness to look stupid with a shovel, which is hard for people, right? And I know it seems like, look stupid with a shovel. What are you talking about? You just dig. Well,
not if you've
never done it before, you can hurt your back. You can do all sorts of stuff. Billy's right there, like, this is how you hold your back so you don't hurt your back. This is how you use the tool to make the most impact. He went through all of that. And it's not, you may feel like, I should know this already. No. There's a whole bunch of stuff I don't know about things I should know things about, and it's better to just admit I'd rather ask how to use a chainsaw without cutting my arm off than to accidentally cut my arm off with the chainsaw.
Sure.
And I had to do that once in front of a whole workshop of dudes where there was a chainsaw. I wanted to use the chainsaw, and I said, "Hey, JR, how do I do this without hurting myself? Because I'm going to have to use a chainsaw, and I don't know how. And I know all y'all know how right now, and you'll all just jump in and do it for me right now because you're nice. But what if I have to cut a branch? Like, how do I not?"
I remember this conversation on Jack's show.
Yeah.
About chainsaw and a circular saw or a saber saw, or somebody gave you one, or your father maybe got it.
Yeah, circular saw. That's
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Like, so the circular saw, because it doesn't just stop the blade, it's an old one. You cut, and then wherever you put that saw, it's still cutting for a little while. And if it's your leg that you put it on, you just cut your leg. And if it's your finger, it's your finger. Right. And so you have to, like, what I learned to do was cut and just slow the hell down and let it stop. Or I learned to put it to the side over in a space where I had designated. And I was glad somebody was there to tell me that, because that's how we get it. So that's why I think it's important to be vulnerable and ask questions.
Right. And the question, like the things you need to know, you don't know you need to know them. Mm-hmm. And the 10 guys standing there that know, they don't know that you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. That's like when I always tell people, when I'm like, look, when you're setting gates up, no matter what we're talking about, when we're near gates, I'm like, if you're setting gates up, make your gates bigger than you think you need your gates to be. And just because you have one, those swales we just put in, they negate access through some of those other gates to part of the property. Yeah. So when we put gates in, we did double gates, 8-footers, so we've got almost 17 feet. And why did we do them like that? Because the biggest pieces of tracked equipment we're going to bring in here are 16 feet. We can crawl that through that 17-inch gap. And if you didn't do that, like, you're going to knock down your brace supports. Like, it's a lot of effort and money to redo those gates, those fencing. And it's something as simple as, hey, if you can't afford all of them, you can go and put them later, but make sure you have something bigger than you need.
Well, and you can put your corner posts in where they're going to go, and you can use cattle panels and permanently close that off, like, or, you know, not permanently, semi-permanently close that off and not use that as gate access.
That's right.
And then you're fine. And then you have that flexibility. I literally needed to go through a gate that wasn't wide enough the other day for my truck, and I thought we needed a pull-through plan. Yeah. And now there is a cemented-in post that this is just how it is. We're always going to have to turn around here, or we're going to have to redo that whole side.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned, like, the wrong people showing up and they fizzle out. Have you had wrong people show up?
Yeah.
Did we have any wrong people show up here ever? Really?
Yeah, they're not back. They didn't have to be talked to. It wasn't their scene.
It wasn't their thing.
It wasn't their scene, because people expect you to interact. People expect you to do things. For something like Self-Reliance Festival, I think it's a little easier to stay on the periphery, but what happens is other people see you on the periphery, and they're going to come up and start talking to you. The other thing I think makes people really sad are the feds.
So I was going to ask you, have you had the machine gun guy show up? There's always a dude that's like, hey, you got machine guns? Hey, you want to see my machine gun? Hey, do you know how to make a machine gun? I'm like,
do you know how to 3D print a machine gun?
I haven't heard that one. I know Drac gets asked that all the time.
Drac got that. He got that on stage, and he said, there's one question I know you guys are going to ask, but I'm not going to say anything. And so he said, I'll ask that question, and said, how do you print guns? And he has a very good answer to that, which is, why would you? And so we've had some people who were probably feds, and it was probably the most disappointing infiltration they ever did, because we're not out here like scheming a militia to overthrow the government. It's not what's going on here, but that's what they're looking for, and they'll ask you leading questions like, you know, how do you... Somebody the other day in my comments was asking me on my Telegram channel, hey, where's that episode where you talk about how to organize a militia?
Really?
And I said, tell me more about that, because I'm not sure which episode that would be, having never done an episode about that. And they said, well, I'm moving here and this and that. And they told a little about their story, so I need to organize a militia. And I was like, well, I'm just not sure. I mean, I have this 3 things you should know before you buy a homestead episode. Like, you know what my content's like. It's not really, like, that would be so out of scope of what I do. And I get hit up on the side by people, I think that's a fed, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to answer them honestly. And then they eventually said, oh, never mind, it was somebody else.
So first comment on the Panic Prepper video yesterday was, this is a militia training group, just like bears. They're going to get raided very soon. And I'm like, Or he said it's a militia cult, is what he
Militia
said. And I remember Happy Gilmore or Adam Sandler's like, who cares if we're joining a cult? You get a free haircut. And I just typed out, I'm like, so do you get a free haircut with that? I'm sorry they made you kill your father. But we got a free haircut. So,
I saw that comment. I wasn't sure if he was joking or not.
I don't think he was
like
joking.
out of left field.
He wouldn't have mentioned it. He's upset that
About
whatever
something.
it was
Yeah.
didn't work out for him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not the same Trollback, is it, with a new name?
Yeah, who knows?
There's that one that keeps coming in. That's pretty funny. But yeah, there's a lot of people who misunderstand or misconstrue wanting to learn how to take care of yourself as somehow evil, or it's a militia, or we're out here to just kill everybody else and take over the world. It's kind of the opposite.
If you really believe that, why would you show up 20 times and say the same shit?
Right. I'm more of the leave me the fuck alone mindset. If you leave me alone and I can live my happy life on my homestead, doing my coffee and my podcast and showing people how to can food or grow food or make cheese or any of these things that I do, there's no problem. The problem is if you're trying to stop me from doing that.
Right.
Because there's nothing morally wrong with anything I'm doing.
And I don't give a shit if it's morally wrong or not.
Yeah.
If you're not harming somebody,
well, then it's not morally wrong if you're not harming somebody.
Whose interpretation of what is the definition of moral, right? I'm sure that it has changed in the Merriam-Webster dictionary over the last 50 decades or 50 years, you know. So it's just, if you're not negatively affecting me, I don't get anything to say about what you're doing.
Right. And when I say moral, I don't necessarily mean in your whatever your belief system is. It really literally goes back down to if you're not harming other people and you're not taking their stuff, I'm cool with it if it's not at my house. Like, there are things at my house that I wouldn't want to see happen.
Sure.
But they don't, because it's my house. But if it's at your house and everybody's in agreement, then that's fine.
We're not going to hang out with you.
I'm not going to watch that. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a very easy line. And when I look back at that person, there's always been this busybody, I don't want you to be able to do this thing I don't like for no good. It's always been that element struggling against the people who are saying, why is it any of your business? And sometimes it's even hard to train yourself that things are not your business. That's because we've been taught that things are and they're not.
They have a button on all social media and it's a block, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't like that I say the F word, right? Fuck. You don't like me saying fuck. Then don't fucking go where I'm at. Because I'm never going to come. I promise you, I'm never going to come to your house. I'm not going to run into you in your shopping mall ever. You have to seek me out in order to hear me say that. Click the button. But they don't ever want to do that. It's never about them not liking it. It's about them wanting to fight over something.
Yes.
That's what I really believe. Because you could very easily never see another word that I say just by clicking the button. But they don't do that.
I was thinking the other day about how when I was in school, you would be assigned on controversial issues like abortion or drug legalization in high school. You would be assigned a position to defend.
Even if it was opposite.
And it didn't, the teacher's like, you basically draw it out of the hat. You have one day to prepare. You're debating you. Two people debating. Go, and we'll decide who wins. And I drew the opposite of my opinion and had to debate, and I was a very good debater. And that was really good for me because I thought, that means that skill of looking from the other side is really important to understand how things work. And sometimes what you find out when you debate the other side is that your original position was wrong.
Right.
And that's hard to let go of. And the older we get, I think the harder it is for us to let go of it. Mm-hmm. Although the opposite, I see a lot of older people waking up right now.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because their pride is lower. Your pride, not always, but your pride gets, I'm much less worried about looking stupid now than I was 20 years ago.
Right.
It was hard to look stupid 20 years ago. Now I tripped and fell in front of a class of everybody and thought it was funny. And I'm sure that looked stupid. It was probably funny to everybody else too, but so I think that might be why we're seeing that age group, or it's a generational thing that our generation was ready to see it.
Right.
So I don't know. It's an interesting, and we got like really young people, and then we have people like yours and my age and older waking up, and I think, good. I wondered when you guys were going to come join me over
welcome,
here.
Welcome.
Come on in.
So you put up a ton of content. You can be found on most social media platforms, yeah?
Yeah.
I know you're doing a 30-minute video like every day in the garden.
Not every day. I'm committed to it once a week because I get more done in the garden in 30 minutes without the video rolling.
Sure you do.
And so I decided that at least once a week I'll roll it. In fact, I'd like to roll it from your garden while I'm here.
Yeah.
Do my garden 30. Because what's cool about your garden, for the people who watch me and see me like in the ground, is yours isn't.
Right.
This is what you can do if you have a back patio that's paved.
Yeah.
And it's exploding. Like, you've got some nice looking growth, especially considering this year. Yeah. So
TikTok, Facebook, YouTube for sure.
Yep.
Instagram.
I'm on Instagram, but I'm not active on it.
Okay.
I would say that. Telegram, MeWe is a big one. So my community interacts a lot on Telegram and MeWe for the Living Free in Tennessee group. And you just find Living Free in Tennessee on either one of those. And that's where you'll get the most interaction with me directly, just because I see it on my phone. And then my community members, because I'm there, have been there. So that's been something. I got really mad at Facebook like 3 years or 4 years ago now. And I said, screw it, guys. This is all going to implode. We got to go somewhere. MeWe's the only thing I can find. So for the next 6 months, these 2 days a week, I'm live there. You can ask me anything. And that developed a culture there. So the cool thing about that group is that you can come in and say, hey, I have a problem with squash bugs. And they'll say, oh, this is what we do for squash bugs. Hey, I'm thinking about starting a business. Well, it just happens there's a lawyer there who can talk to you about that. So it doesn't always happen that way, but there's a vast repository of knowledge, just like with your name, your network. If I write in one of your YouTube lives, I'm looking for this. Usually somebody will answer if you watch the comments. Like, I see people asking you questions and your people answering them.
Because we definitely encourage that, right? Because number one, there seems to be a lot of comments that I don't see. Amanda's like, hey, I said, hey, I saw you on there. She's like, yeah, I posted 7 times, and I only saw 1. So I think
I might know why.
Why?
I have to look at the setting, but what YouTube does is it goes back to top chats. Even when you've put on see all chats, every so often it'll just default you back to top chats, and then you don't see anything.
So there's a lot of comments I don't see. A lot of people have the answer. A lot of times, and you have to realize that I have a 30-second attention span, and I think that it's gotten a lot worse. I think that my attention span is actually shortening, especially when I started using TikTok and Instagram Reels and stuff like that. I'll start a video that's 30 minutes, and I used to only watch long videos. If the videos were only 5-10 minutes, I wasn't interested in them. I only watched videos that were 30 minutes. And now I'll put on a 30-minute video that I actually want to see, and 5 minutes into it, I'm like, I'm over this. So I think that, so my attention, there it is. See, I've already lost it. My attention span's 30 seconds. If I don't have it out there, if a dude asks me a question and I'm going, I've already forgotten the 10 other comments that I saw before that. So it's awesome that the people watching, we all have something in common, and that's why they're watching. And it's just like guys all the time are like, how do I get my wife on board? Or the more common one is, how do I find a girl who is on board with this? And I'm like, you have to go where that's at, right? And people travel thousands of guys. I love the like, oh, you're too far away, you're 200 miles away. I'm like, people come here from California, dozens of them, New York, every single time we do one of these things. Guys have found women and they've been married. They got married that have been here. They find friends. They find partners and stuff. So you just have to go, and you don't have to come to our event. You just have to go
an event.
The thing is, we have people from all walks of life that come in here, but they're qualified, right? And what I mean by that, it's like a qualified customer. It's a pre-qualified. So why are they here? We're all here for the same common interest. So even though we might not agree on a lot of things that we do, each of us, we agree on this, and that's why we're here. So that's where you're going to find.
Yeah, where you're not going to find somebody on board necessarily is at the corner watering hole or...
Probably not.
Probably not, right?
Not.
Like lifestyle things you do to quote unquote find a partner that you don't, like they're not fitting into this lifestyle.
Yeah, you probably don't want to find the drunk girl that'll, go out to the car with you.
Yeah.
She's probably not very conducive to your gun hobby and buying tractors.
Mm-hmm.
There's some quote that I'm probably butchering, but it's like, "Don't preach to the people who don't seek it," something like that. Like,
that's good, yeah.
Yeah, don't go to somebody else and try to convert them into being what you want. Go find the people that are like you.
And if you're with somebody who's not 100% like you are, that's not necessarily bad. What's bad is if they are unsupportive of you doing what your passion is. I think that's bad, and that's where the problem is. I mean, it's better if you're both working towards the same goal, but if they're actively undermining you, that's the problem. If they're letting you... I know a lot of couples that do really well where one is working their lawyerly job and the other one's super passionate about homesteading, and they both support each other. Like, one will put on the right clothes for the evening for the event that they need to go to. The other one will occasionally jump in and help with that fencing project. And that works.
Right.
That's a mutual, because people grow and change over time too. But so I think it's a little unrealistic to have the expectation that your partner's 100% all of these things all of the time. They're gonna have other interests, and that is what it is. That otherwise it's boring.
Yep. Okay, so where do they find you? People want to, and you have a podcast we also didn't mention. So where are you at?
The best way to reach me is through my podcast, Living Free in Tennessee. If you want to keep up on events that are happening, it's in the podcast, but livingfreeintennessee.com also has show notes. It has links to things that you can get from here to there. I roast coffee, so I have a coffee business called Holler Roast.
You guys should buy some.
HollerRoast.com, or buy it from John. You can do it two ways.
She has more kinds than I have.
I have more kinds than he does, and
I got bigger boobs on my labels.
I'll write you. He does have bigger boobs on his radar. I'll write you a handwritten note with mine, just for the record. So, and then on social media, I'm Nicole Sauce. So you can find me on Twitter as Nicole Sauce. You can find me on TikTok as Nicole Sauce LFTM, because I got my TikTok as Nicole Sauce and then forgot how to access it again.
Why are you Nicole Sauce?
Nicole Sauce is my stripper name.
So I know about your OnlyFans, but why is it really Sauce?
I sang in a rock band for 15 years called Sauce.
Okay.
And people couldn't remember my real last name, and so they just started calling me Nicole Sauce because I was with the band Sauce. Okay. I still have sauceband.com, but there's nothing up there. And
right.
I'll be singing at the next Self-Reliance Festival.
Right on. Awesome.
Yeah, I just put that together. So it won't be rock, it'll be...
Do you have a rad drummer?
I don't have a drummer, that's the thing. So it'll be my songs adjusted for an acoustic performance this time.
Polka?
Mm-hmm. No, not polka. Although maybe a little bit polka.
Russian folk?
Drama rock.
Are you going to have a puppet with you?
Totally. Yeah,
right. Just
for you, I'll have a monkey.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like this content, leave some comments. If you don't like me, but you like her, go to her channels. She's easy to find, and there's a lot of good content there. There's a lot of content also. So check her out. You know where to find her, and we will see you guys next time.
Yeah, man, I'm talking about realest, one of the realest.